بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علمك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Another discussion in moral philosophy is about moral value. Moral value. In Persian we say ارزش اخلاقی. In Arabic we say القيمة الأخلاقية. The question is, what makes value in morality? But before we start the discussion, I have to make a note. Sometimes in moral philosophy, we use value in contrast to obligation. If you remember, we said those moral concepts that can be used as predicates are 7. And these 7 are divided into 2 groups. Those which are arzeshi, value-based or evaluative, and those which are taklifi, obligational. That was a very kind of narrower sense, because their arzeshi or evaluative was used in contrast to obligational. Right, wrong, good, bad were considered as evaluative. Ought not, obligation were obligational. But here we are talking about all of them. Any kind of moral concept, whether it be evaluative or obligational, has a moral value in contrast to something which is not moral. And what I mean by it's not moral means it's not related to morality. Because sometimes we say something is moral. Normally in the common conversations, when we say something is moral, we mean it's good. It's opposite to immoral. But when moral philosophers say something is moral, they can mean it is related to morality. It's opposite to amoral. Amoral means something which is not related to morality. So here we are not talking about good value or bad value, or value in contrast to obligation. We are talking about anything related to akhlaq. For example, you say, honesty is good, dishonesty is bad, you should tell the truth. All of them are called arzeshi. These are all moral concepts, value-based concepts. Okay? We have no doubt that whenever we judge about something, sometimes we know that they have good value in moral sense. Sometimes they have bad value. We blame, we condemn. But there are also things that we say morally they don't have any significance. We don't make any moral judgment about them. Okay? So something, in order to have moral value, whether positive or negative, has to fit into a framework of akhlaq. For example, the fact that someone is born, you cannot say you were right to be born or you were wrong to be born. This was not his action. Or, you were right to become old or not to become old, It's not related to that person. Or someone, just walking without any reason. But we cannot say it's bad, we cannot say it's good. Someone is drinking water. As such, we cannot say it's good or bad. Yes, sometimes it can be good if a secondary title is added to this. For example, drinking is good if you want to be able to gain energy, if you want to be able to study. Or drinking is bad if this water doesn't belong to you, or if you are fasting, But drinking water as such is neutral. So we have no doubt that there are certain issues that we can morally judge about them, or we can morally evaluate them, positive or negative. And there are things which fall outside the boundaries of akhlaq, means they are neutral from moral perspective. Okay? Now, the question is something that moral philosophers have to address. Those which have moral value, where does that value come from? What makes an action morally good or bad, or gives positive value or negative value to an action? So this is what we want to discuss. The issue of value has been also discussed in other disciplines. In economics, they talk about value. Inshallah, I will come back to economics. In law, they talk about value. In psychology, in many sciences, and they have many, many different definitions. Even some writers have suggested that there are 140 definitions of value. 140.
For each subject, there's a different definition, right?
For each subject, and also different people. People have defined it different, like culture. There are tens of definitions for what is culture. So for value also, there are many definitions. When it comes to akhlaq, it's more focused, but again, there are many views. So what we want to discuss today is to see what are the elements that contribute to giving moral value to something. Okay? Ayatollah Misbah in this book starts first with a discipline which is not akhlaq. It's not even also very much close to akhlaq, but it helps us to understand akhlaq with respect to value. Differences, of course, are there. And that is economics. In economics also they talk about value. Say, what's the value of this product? What's the value of this car? What's the value of this, for example, carpet? Okay? So in economics they talk about value. Let's see what they mean by value and then try to get some assistance for understanding value in akhlaq. In economics, some people have said value is about how much work has been put into this. Two people make carpets. One of them make carpets in 1 week. Another one spends the same hours, but it takes him 1 year. So one carpet has taken 1 week, another carpet has taken 1 year. Which one has more value?
One year.
The one who has taken 1 year of work. Yes? It's like two people who give lectures or teach. One has taken him 30, 40 years. One has taken him, a few hours or few weeks. Which one has more value? So, how much work has been put into this? Another idea is, how rare is this? In economics, sometimes value is more when something is more difficult to find. For example, why gold is valuable? If gold was everywhere like soil, it wouldn't have value. Gold has value because it's rare. Yeah? In a country when there is no, for example, water, you see sometimes water becomes so valuable that is more important than oil. For a person who is going to die, he is ready to give thousands of dollars to get one bottle of water. Okay? So, to be rare, to be something not common, adds to the value or makes value. So some people said this is the reason. Some people have said value is decided by supply and demand. You cannot say there is a fixed value. The same good sometimes becomes more valuable when demand is more than supply. And sometimes the same good becomes less valuable because there is too much supply or not that much demand. Another idea is how much this is desirable, how much this is beneficial, how much this gives pleasure. This is also, for example, you want to buy sofa. You see which one gives you more comfort. Okay? Maybe we can say none of these elements alone can fix the value, but a combination and a balance of all these can determine the value of something economically. Adam Smith, he says there are two types of value in economy: use value and exchange value. Use value means how much it benefits you, how much it's useful for you, how much it helps you to meet your needs. This is use value. For example, rice has a use value, meat has a use value, but the rest use value. But there is also exchange value, means what you can get if you exchange this with something else. For example, coin and notes, even gold. We can use gold a little bit for decoration, for example, whatever. But most of the value of gold is for exchange, not for use. Yeah, for use, what difference it makes to have gold or artificial, you know, jewelry? It doesn't make that much difference. But we say no, this gold has exchange value. You can give this gold and take this much money, or give gold and take this much goods and products. So it's exchange value. The value in the market is somehow related to use value, but it's very much exchange value. The market is functioning according to exchange value. In any case, when we study different theories about value in economics, we find there are two important things. One is how useful something is, how desirable it is, and second, comparison, what this can do in comparison to other things. In economics, comparison is very important, like exchange, it's very important. Now let's go to akhlaq. We believe that there are few elements which are there in moral value, and I hope you listen very carefully to these elements so that we can understand how moral value is formed, and then you can understand what has moral value, what doesn't have moral value, and what has more value. Because a wise person would not only do good things, a wise person would do things which are better or the best. So comparison is very important because our life is very limited. Yeah? And there are many things that one can do. Even there are many good things that one can do. But you have to find out priorities. Yes? Things that not only they are good, but prepare the ground for further good, for endurable good, for deeper good, for more outreaching good. There are many elements that make something better, more important. So, let us now see what are the elements that make moral value. First, desirability, usefulness is the first element. How good is this in the sense that how desirable it is, how useful it is, how beneficial it is. It is something related to like what we had in economics. We said in economics, all theories seem to at least agree on one point, and that is desirability. Something has to be desirable. But in akhlaq, it's not necessarily a matter of what they will give you instead of or in return for this. Because in economics we say, okay, you have gold, anytime you want you can cash this gold with this much money. Akhlaq doesn't need to be looked at in this way. Although there are people who only ask, if I do this, how much reward I get? They calculate. So they do investment, but again, a little bit they are economical, I mean, looking from perspective of economy. They do business. But we believe that moral actions have their own value, and not just because of what you can get in return. Either you get in return, for example, something good, or you are saved from punishment. You can prevent penalty. No, moral actions can be good without this kind of exchange. For example, when we say justice is good, we don't mean how much you can gain by justice in the business sense. So the first thing is that moral actions should be desirable, should be something that we like and we appreciate. The second is that they should be voluntary. Anything which is out of control, it has no moral value. Yeah, we said this before in the series on akhlaq, that in akhlaq we only deal with voluntary actions, or with that qualities of soul that somehow our free will has a role, either a role to bring them, or a role to stop them, or a role to change them. If something is totally out of your control, out of your hand, we don't discuss it in akhlaq. Okay? So one important part of moral value is that it should be something which you do freely. If something is forced, it has no moral value. If someone is forced to do something good, or is forced to do something bad, really forced, it has no value. Of course, if someone is threatened, it's different. Because when someone is threatened, then depending on the pressure, sometimes this person can be morally excused, sometimes can be morally not excused. For example, there are people who threaten me that if you don't kill this person, you will lose your job. I am a policeman, or I am, I don't know, soldier. They say, some people say, kill this neighbor, for us. And if you don't do it, we kill you, or you lose your job. Here, it is not jabr, it is ikrah. Means you still have control, although they have pressurized you, but you cannot say, I have lost my control. Still you can say no. So it depends what they expect from you and what they are going to take away from you. Sometimes the balance is so much different that you might be permitted to do that. For example, they ask you to tell a lie, little lie, otherwise they will kill all your family. So maybe here morally you would be given excuse. But you have no excuse to kill other people, even if they kill you. No one can kill other people, even if they kill him. Okay? So, what is important is that you should have free will. Even if there is a little freedom, still you are responsible. Of course, we take into account all the pressures. We take into account all the pressures, or all the encouragement. You do the same thing with encouragement or discouragement. It makes difference. You give, say, charity, and everyone praises you, Or you give charity and everyone blames you. Why you are, giving this money? So you have free will, but this encouragement or discouragement would add to the balance. So if you do something good against discouragement, you will get more credit. Yeah? Okay. So free will is very important. In general, in morality, we talk about voluntary actions or qualities that lead to actions and they are in your control. For example, you are greedy. Your greediness leads to an action, but you can stop greediness or control or regulate it. So this greediness is also discussed in akhlaq, although it is not action. But this is a quality that serves as the source or basis for action. And sometimes action leads to quality. So sometimes quality leads to action, sometimes action leads. For example, you are not generous, but by repeating generosity and acts of generosity, you become generous. So this generosity is also discussed in akhlaq, because you, by voluntarily repeating generosity, you can become generous. Okay? So, as I said before, either should be voluntary action or a quality that somehow your freedom and free will can influence. To begin, to stop, to regulate, to increase, to decrease, somehow you have control over it. Third, the third element in moral value is how human it is. How much desirable it is for human beings. We had very important discussion before in the first year of Hawza, when we talked about nearness of Allah being one side of the coin and completion in humanity is another side of the same coin. And we explained that, and also in the book Self-Knowledge this is discussed. We said philosophers say حقيقة الشيء بفصله الأخير. The reality of everything is made by its very last differential, because other things in your essence are common. What makes something human? If you have studied logic and philosophy, you would say, okay, we look at the definition of human being. Human being is jawharun ذو أبعاد ثلاثة, which means جسم, نام متحرك حساس بالإرادة ناطق. So you start from jawhar up to natiq. جوهر ذو أبعاد ثلاثة, نام means has life, حساس متحرك بالإرادة is animal, and ناطق. So you bring all definition of human being. When you say jawhar, that is common between us and every other substance. Even sand, plaster, metal, they are like us jawhar. When you say za ab'adan salasa, it includes sand and plaster but excludes something which is jawhar but not three-dimensional, like angels or intellect. Intellect in the sense of independent intellect. When you say nami, non-living beings are excluded. When you say hassas mutaharrik bil irada, plants are excluded. vegetables are excluded, trees are excluded. When you say natiq, horses, dogs, elephants are excluded. Okay? So you can mention all of them as they are essential parts of humanity. But at the same time, philosophers tell us what makes a human being. A human being is the last part, natiq. Fasluhu al-akhir. It's last differential. Because anything else can be found in other things. The only thing that can be found in human beings and not else is last differential, and that is natiq. I use normally this example. I say, if you want to have apple tree in your garden, you go to the gardener and say, please give me a sapling of apple tree. He says, I have a sapling, but it doesn't bear fruits. It's just wood and leaves. And say, no, I don't want this. He says, I have a sapling, it bears fruits, but for example, bears figs. You say, no, I want an apple tree. Although apple tree with fig tree have lots of things in common, and apple tree and fig tree with a tree which is just giving shade, for example, have many things in common. But when you say, I want apple tree, you want it for that little thing that is exclusive. You go to the bookshop, you say, I want Al-Mizan fi Tafsir al-Quran. He says, I have another book, the same size. You say, no, I don't want another book, even if the size is the same. He says, the same language, no, the same subject, tafsir. No. I know that Al-Mizan fi Tafsir al-Quran has many things in common with another book in the same size and the same language. Maybe by the same author. But what makes me interested in Al-Mizan is not those tens of other things which are common. Is that particular thing that can be found here and not else. Okay? So, this is a very important discussion. Please refer back to those lectures. So, if you want to have human life, what should you do? Suppose someone is not religious, or it's religious but we want to use another language. We say, are you interested in living as a human being or not? He says yes. Say, okay, what is a human life? If you just enjoy yourself by meeting your needs and satisfying your animal desires, still you have not reached the level of humanity. It's like we want an apple tree, but we have just a tree. If you want to have human life, what should you do? You must go after those things which are exclusively human. You may ask me, then you mean we don't eat, we don't drink? Say no. Eat and drink for the sake of those things which are exclusive human. For example, human beings have genuine interest in knowledge. There are two seekers of knowledge. Both of them eat and drink and learn. They go to the same university, the same subject, the same courses. But one of them seeks knowledge to get money to eat and drink. And one of them eats and drinks to seek knowledge to be able to serve himself and other people with knowledge. So these are totally two different lifestyles, although they look on the surface the same. The one who goes after human, genuine desires, but at the same time meets his animal desires in order to be able to carry on, and the one who goes after human interest, but for the sake of being able to eat better and to drink better and to have more pleasure in the physical sense. These are totally different. A human life is the life which is dedicated to developing those things that can only be found in human beings. You know, sometimes it's good to put yourself in the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try to imagine Allah has created us as human beings. So we have whatever animals have, but He has given us something extra. نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. But then Allah finds us, na'udhu billah, we are acting like animals. So what would He feel when He looks at His creatures, that He has given them the potential of being human beings above all animals, but they are functioning at the level of animals? It's like you make in your garden apple tree and doesn't bear fruits, or bears very bitter and dry apple that you cannot taste. What do you do if you have such apple tree in your garden? You try to replace it. But Allah is patient with us. Allah says, I give you chance, you change yourself. If this spring you didn't bring good apples, another spring is coming. But the time is limited. So, everything which is moral has to be desirable by human beings as such. It has to have human value. Fourth, it should be through conscious decision. Because sometimes you are free, but you do things unconsciously. For example, you are sleeping and make a decision. Or if someone is drunk and makes a decision. Or someone is heedless and makes a decision. You have to be alert, awake, and conscious. If you remember, when we were talking in the first year about value of intention, we said husn fa'ili in Islamic ethics is not just having good intention. How alert you are, how sincere you are, how knowledgeable you are, all makes big difference. The same action done voluntarily by two people, alim and jahil, is very much different. Or someone who is very sincere, someone is not sincere. Or someone who is alert and someone who is not alert. Okay? These are very important points. So, if you bring all these four elements to be beneficial, inshallah in future we say what we mean by being beneficial in akhlaq. To be beneficial, to be free, to have human value, to be human, and to come with consciousness, awareness, these make moral value. There are people who think moral value is made by society. People say, you have to follow the norms of society. See what in your society is good, do it. What is bad, don't do it. We don't accept this. We say it's important to be as much as possible in harmony with the society, but without endangering your values. Okay? So if it's a matter of driving on the right or left, see what people do, you do the same. Yeah? You cannot say, I want to drive on the right side when everyone drives on the left. Or for example, when it comes to wearing white or black when there is funeral. If you go to a funeral and all people there, when they are sad, they have black, you also put on black. If they are putting on white, you also try to observe that. But these are customs. Customs are different from values. When it comes to customs, do in Rome as Romans do. But when it comes to values, it's much more complicated. I cannot say do regardless of what Romans do, but I cannot also say do as Romans do. You have to be very careful here where to compromise and where not to compromise. There are people who try not to compromise at all, and the result is they will endanger some fundamental values in the long term. Are you listening or not? These are very important things. There are people who try not to compromise at all. All wajibat, all mustahabbat, everything has to be done in every part of the world. This in the long term can be very destructive and can make the position of people who have the same values and ideals very much in danger. Not maybe necessarily tomorrow, not maybe necessarily in this city or this country, but all over the world. I have examples, but I don't give examples. Okay. But at the same time, you cannot be loose, and every time there is a little pressure, a little criticism, a little blame, you give up. No. There is a need for balance. And this is what I call principled flexibility. Principled flexibility. We have to be flexible, otherwise they will destroy you. You know, we have this example, say movement is like water. Water, they tell him, go to this cup of water, goes inside water. Go to this pot, go to this, I don't know, any container. Water says, okay, I go there, but water remains water and doesn't lose anything, just takes the shape. But wood and iron, they say go to this, that I don't go, then they cut them. And if they resist too much, even cutting is, they make them powder. And then they kick them everywhere. So, if you are too rigid, you will be having no long-term success. If you are too flexible, means you are disappearing. You are not there anymore. So what is important is principled flexibility. You have to understand where to remain strong and strict, and where to remain strong and lenient. You are always strong. People think strong means to be harsh, to be rigid. No, we are always strong, but sometimes we are strong and fixed, sometimes we are strong and lenient, flexible. It's very important. So, we don't believe that society should force and form and dictate and indoctrinate our values, because that society may be a society which is society of Pharaoh, society of Namrud. Maybe they want to force shirk, maybe they want to force slavery. But at the same time, we don't say you have to disregard totally society. Even if you live in a non-faith society or non-Islamic society, still you have to observe the norms of the society, but you have to also be very much careful, very wise to understand where to compromise, where to be strict. Okay, our time is over. Inshallah, we continue next session. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.